why your ego loves stress. So we live in a world that is incredibly stressful. We are constantly bombarded with news, notifications on our phone, all these different things, family, friends, the world, and it's stressful. It's super stressful. But you know what really loves to be stressed out? It really just thrives on it like, ooh, this is the best thing in the whole wide world. Your ego. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because stress helps our egos feel important and validates that ego story that I am all by myself. It is me against you, me against the world. Nobody understands. There is no solution. And I am all by myself. The ego loves a story, and it loves to tell stories that repeat again and again and again and again. And if you look throughout your own life, you can maybe find those ego stories, those stories that show up as a narrative throughout your whole life. One of my ego stories that I have experienced is that nobody wants to help me. I know when I'm in my ego and that little energy pops up. But first, let's talk about the ego, the function of the ego, our intuition, spirit, and some other different things. So first and foremost is our egos develop as little kids. It's our protective shielding against the world. And we need our egos because our egos allow us to differentiate our bodies, our physicality from like the oneness of spirit, from the one consciousness of the universe. So if you didn't have an ego, you wouldn't be able to differentiate yourself from a speeding bus that was coming down the street. And that's not a good thing. But if our egos are not in service to our spirit, if our egos are the one that is driving that bus, what it will do is systematically cause so much stress and havoc in your life. Because the ego has no access to anything outside of itself. It has no access to the present moment, to solution, to listening. It loves to defend itself. It loves to feel bad. It loves to isolate because the ego works as me against you, and you scare me. Now, our spirit, the part of us that is deeper, the part of us that is innate, your beautiful, sweet little spirit that is in your body right now. Now, that is the place that's underneath that ego chatter. It's the part of us that's wise, that's creative, that's grounded, that guides us, that uplifts, supports, and nurtures us. And it's with us all the time. But the ego doesn't like necessarily to find solution because that means that whatever the ego is struggling with isn't as important as it would like it to be because the ego really likes to work in all or nothing, and it loves for anything for the stakes to be as high as possible. Anytime I'm with my clients and I can tell that they are in their ego, a big telltale sign is that there is no solution, that the stakes could not be higher, and that it electrocutes their little nervous systems all the time. I remember not that long ago, I had a client named Alexandra. And Alexandra was a mother. She was super hard on herself and also really wanted to develop a relationship with her intuition. But what she found all the time was that her anxious ego self constantly was terrorizing her. Any single time she tried to access any solutions, her intuition, anything outside of her very limited scope, what she would do is her little ego barking dog would tell her a million and different things about what could go wrong. And so what happened is she ended up policing herself to such a degree that it was so stressful. Anytime she tried to connect with her spirit, her ego would tell her whether it was right or wrong, and then raise the stakes even higher. Anytime she tried to connect with her guides, it was like, if you don't connect with your guides right, then they're not going to be there for you. If you don't do it right, or even another way I had showed up of how she even tried to connect with her spirit in her own little spiritual routine was that it was so tight about how it was right that there was no breath. There was no levity, there was no movement, there was no spirit. It was all so constricted. And when we're in our egos and in those stressed out places, you can feel it throughout your whole body because it's kind of like, everything is so tight. Because it is. Because that's how the ego functions. It doesn't have anything else, because how it sees the world, how it defends itself, how it protects itself. Because like I said, our ego develops as our protective shell in the world. It's our armoring. And so if we go through life armored, we push away goodness, we push away support, we push away solutions, we push away our connection to our spirit, and only get caught in all or nothing and stress, which again, makes it feel important. Because I know that even in my own life, when things are really stressful, even if like they're not that stressful, even if I'm just like being productive and like all of a sudden I'm in my own little ego barking dog self and it's like, I have to do all of these different things and it's so important. I have no time for movement. I have no time for play. I have no time for dance. I have no time for levity. All big signs that my ego is stressing me out and making the stakes all or nothing. Now, back to my sweet little client, we had to really work on paying attention to the vibration of the ego. And I'm going to give you some telltale signs. First of all, like I was saying, the ego is all or nothing. It is me against you. It self-separates out, is obsessed with right and wrong. It's all or nothing, and is extremely, extremely critical. If you're critical of yourself, if you're critical of your routine, if you're critical even in the sense of like, am I doing this right? I don't think I'm doing this right. Is this even working? That's ego, 1,010%. Second of all, your body feels tight. It feels everything in you. You feel your shoulders, you feel your jaw. We get locked jaw. We get like, we hold a lot of our tension here. We don't speak it out. Another way that our ego hijacks us, it tightens everything. And the interesting thing, not only about our ego, but even about our own biology, is that we get caught in these ego loops and these ego patterns and find our little ego mind likes to tell us that stress and all or nothing is a really good way to motivate ourselves. And the ego likes to tell us that if we move from all or nothing, super stress, to connected to the present moment, that we won't accomplish as much, that we won't do what it is that we need to do, that we won't be motivated, that the structures that we put in place will fall apart. These are all ways that our ego story hijacks us super hardcore. And when we're in that ego entrenched, there is no ability to see anything else. And that we use that biologically to motivate ourselves. And we get addicted to these loops because we get these little hits of even like it's cortisol. It's like we cortisol, boop, 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 boop. And to get off of that loop, to get off of that merry-go-round of that super critical ego can feel dangerous. That's what the ego likes to say. If you don't motivate yourself through stress, you're not going to accomplish anything. You're not going to be safe. You're not going to achieve. You're not going to do what it is that you want to do. And it's bullshit. So with my beautiful client, we worked on a few different tools. One, starting to pay attention to who's doing the talking. Our egos are harsh. They are not creative. They, again, like I said, raise the stakes. They have no access to breath or the present moment. That's a good way that you can tell your ego. Second of all, egos love a story. If you're in that same story, like I said, one of my ego stories is I'm all by myself and nobody wants to help me. That's an ego story. Another good way to pay attention. Another way is if you have no humor or no ability to laugh at yourself, because the ego has no ability to laugh at itself. It has no humor because it takes itself and everything so seriously. My Nana would always say, the situation is critical, but not serious. And what she meant was that no matter what you're dealing with, it can be really important, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing, life or death. And so here's some really quick tools that we can use to move from that ego energy of being stuck back into the present moment, back into our spirit, back into where we can actually start and listen. So first, I'm going to give you a tool that I tell my clients all the time. Use it. This is critical. One hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and take a few deep breaths. Breathe into your nose. Imagine like you're breathing into your belly button, and exhale like you're exhaling 10 birthday candles. And do that 3 or 4 times, and just notice how the chatter begins to slow, how we start getting connected back to our physical bodies, back to our spirit, into the present moment where we can choose. Second of all, in my family, as my mom taught me, name your ego. Think of it as your pet. You don't shoot your pet, you train your pet. You don't want to kill your ego, you want to train your ego to be in service to your spirit. And a good way to do that is by naming it, because then we don't get so hijacked. We can give ourselves a little bit of space. For me, my ego, and think of it as a dog. My ego's name is Pete, and Pete is a golden doodle. And my little golden doodle, sometimes my little Pete, my little barking dog, be all around, super happy, friendly, all over the place. And when Pete is being poo-poo, that's when Pete gets into overdoing, into I'm the only one that can do this, into stress. And then I know that it's Pete. I'm like, all right, Pete, down boy. It's time for me to connect back to my spirit. And third of all, a really great way to train your ego is to find the humor. Laugh. Find comedy, find the humor in your situation, find where there is that place of laughter and joy, because that is a very powerful way that we cannot get hijacked by our ego stories, connect back to our joy, back to our spirit, and back to the present moment. There's a really important saying that I grew up with that we would say, laugh and the devil goes away. And it really just means that when we get caught up in appearance, when we get caught up in how things are and how serious it is, when you start to bring humor and levity to it, everything changes. There's an alchemical, even transformation in the energy, because you're no longer seized by fear, but actually start to see things from a new perspective. And that's the power of our intuition. That's the power of our spirit. That's the power of coming back to the present moment and choosing. So the first thing, and this is what we talked with my gorgeous client, Alexandra, make a choice to put your attention on your spirit. Life gets busy. We get hijacked by our ego. But if we decide to start paying attention by even that same tool that I gave you a few minutes ago, hand on your heart, hand on your belly, coming back to the present moment, you'll be more aware of who's doing the talking, giving you more choice. Finding humor and levity, and finding solution and asking for support from not only your ex-plane, the people around you, but the why, your guides, your angels, and your higher self. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you do, hit like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. How do you navigate when you get stuck in your own ego? What are the things, what's maybe a tool that you love? I love to hear it from you. I am sending you all my love. If you watch this on YouTube, check out my Instagram in the link below. And don't forget to download my spiritual toolkit. You'll get a guided meditation and a really great intuitive workbook that can really help you bring these tools into mastery. And last but not least, if you're really wanting to bring this into fruition, I just released my new online course, Become an Intuitive Badass. It's 10 videos and a workbook and meditations, and it's awesome. And I cannot wait to hear from you. So leave me a comment. I'm sending you all my love.